The 8 trigrams array. The year is 1235. The Song Dynasty is bleeding. Mongol armies that have already swallowed the Jin Dynasty whole, crossed the Gobi Desert, and shattered the armies of Persia and Eastern Europe are now pressing south. And in the war councils of Lin'an, the Song capital, generals are not drawing troop positions on a map. They are drawing the universe, 8 symbols, 8 directions. One formation built on the same cosmological structure used to read the future, understand the flow of reality, and map the relationship between heaven and earth. The 8 trigrams array, the Bagua Zhen, attributed to the legendary strategist Zhuge Liang in the 3rd century, arranged 8 mutually reinforcing subunits corresponding to the 8 trigrams of the I Ching: heaven, earth, water, fire, thunder, wind, mountain, lake, each capable of rotating into the next mid-battle. The Wujing Zongyao, one of China's oldest surviving printed military encyclopedias compiled in 1044, documents extensive drum and flag signaling commands required to execute the formation's rotations. Song military theorist Yue Ke, grandson of the great General Yue Fei, wrote that Zhuge Liang's formation principles were being actively studied for deployment against steppe cavalry in his era. No other military tradition on earth, not Rome, not Byzantium, not the caliphates, ever thought to build a battle formation out of a cosmological diagram. The mainstream explanation is that it functioned primarily as a philosophical training framework. But those same 8 rotation gates appear in the physical design of the fortress complexes that actually stopped the Mongols cold. Was this mysticism? Or was it the earliest documented attempt to build a military system that could not be broken because it mirrored the structure of reality itself? The Mandarin Duck Formation. 12 men. That is the entire unit. 12 soldiers in a specific locked arrangement so lethal that it stopped Mongol cavalry raids on the northern frontier, neutralized Japanese pirates in the coastal jungles of Zhejiang province, and functioned identically on open steppe, forested hills, and city streets without changing a single step. Ming General Qi Jiguang designed it in the 1560s and documented every detail in his military treatise, the Jixiao Xinshu. Weapon specifications, spacing measurements, multi-page drill sequences, with the confidence of a man who had tested it until it could not fail. 2 soldiers with large bamboo shields anchored the front. 2 with smaller shields protected the flanks. 4 long spearmen delivered thrusts from behind. 2 short sword specialists handled anything that broke through. 1 fire weapon operator covered the rear. 1 commander directed all 11. Each role was designed to cover the blind spots of every other role simultaneously, creating what modern military analysts describe as a system of overlapping coverage with no exploitable gap at any range. The formation's first combat test against the Wokou pirates at the Battle of Taizhou in 1561 reportedly produced a kill ratio so lopsided it remains difficult to verify. Scholars credit Qi Jiguang's genius for designing a practical small unit system that happened to generalize across environments. But no formation in Roman, Macedonian, or Ottoman military history was simultaneously optimized for jungle, plain, and urban combat without structural modification. The name itself, Mandarin duck, a bird famous for bonding for life, suggests the philosophy was inseparability. The question some researchers quietly ask is whether Qi Jiguang invented this or rediscovered something the Mongol conquest had erased. The crane wing formation. The open steppe north of the Jin Dynasty capital in 1211 gives you nothing. No trees, no hills, no rivers to anchor a flank. Just flat earth stretching to every horizon, and somewhere out there, Genghis Khan's General Yebi with cavalry that could cover 100 kilometers in a single day. The crane wing formation, the Heiyi Jin, was the Jin answer. A strong fixed center designed to absorb the initial charge with two long curving wings extending forward at 45 degrees on each flank, positioned 300 paces from the main line. The wings were not meant to match the Mongols in speed. They were meant to close after the charge committed, like hands clapping shut around a fist that had punched between them. The Wujing Zongyao documents the signaling system required to execute this in full. 64 distinct drum rhythm commands and 16 flag, color, and position codes, a battlefield communication architecture sophisticated enough to coordinate wing closure across nearly 1 kilometer of screaming, arrow-filled chaos. Historian Peter Lorge of Vanderbilt University notes in his 2008 work on Chinese medieval warfare that the crane wing system required officer-to-soldier ratios nearly 3 times higher than standard Song infantry deployment. The mainstream view holds it largely failed in open field because Mongol cavalry could accelerate through the wing-closing window. But the Song Shi records multiple engagements where the closure actually worked, not because Chinese infantry moved faster than horses, but because Mongol attack doctrine, the feigned retreat followed by the return charge, was predictable enough to pre-time the wings. They were not chasing the cavalry, they were predicting it, the fish scale formation. A fish scale does not stop a blow, it redirects it. Each scale overlaps the one beneath, spreading force sideways, dissipating it across the whole surface rather than concentrating it at a single point. Now build an army on that principle. The fish scale formation, the Yulin Zhen, appears in the Wujing Zongyao with the kind of geometric precision that suggests centuries of refinement before it was ever printed. Each infantry rank offset from the one in front by approximately 1.5 meters laterally. Rank-to-rank depth of 15 meters. When Mongol cavalry broke through the front rank, it did not reach empty space. It hit the second rank angled to deflect the charge sideways. When the second buckled, it hit the third. Each successive impact converted forward momentum into lateral scattering. Military scholar Ralph Sawyer, in his 1993 analysis of the 7 military classics, calculated that the offset geometry reduced the effective frontage a cavalry charge could exploit by approximately 40% compared to a straight rank formation. The formation's self-repair protocol, described by Song military writer Chen Yuanliang around 1264, required the second-rank soldier to the offset left of a fallen man to step forward immediately, maintaining the scale overlap under live cavalry assault. The mainstream explanation calls this standard depth of defense, a universal anti-cavalry principle found across cultures. But European depth formations stopped cavalry through mass. The fish scale redirected it. That is a different philosophy of force entirely. One treats a cavalry charge as something to absorb. The other treats it as something to steer. Some researchers believe this distinction, redirect rather than resist, was derived not from military theory, but from observational biology. Whether or not that is true, the formation held the Huai River line for a generation. The crossbow volley line. The Mongol cavalry charge had one exploitable weakness, the reload window. A crossbow took 30 seconds to reload. A horse at full gallop covered 200 meters in that time. The Song Dynasty's answer was not to build a faster crossbow, it was to make sure the reload window never existed. 3 rotating lines of crossbowmen, one firing, one reloading, one advancing to replace the firing line, created a continuous wall of bolts with no gap, no pause, no moment of silence that hooves could pour through. The Wujing Zongyao calls this the Sankai Shi Efa, the 3-talent shooting method, with each rank's timing governed by a specific drum beat, the command sequence documented in full. The Zhuge Nu, the song-repeating crossbow, is archaeologically attested with specimens in Beijing's National Museum. a weapon with an estimated draw weight of 50 to 80 kilograms, accurate to 70 meters, capable of firing a succession of bolts without full manual reload. For comparison, the three-rank musket volley fire that Maurice of Nassau introduced in Europe around 1594 is considered a revolutionary military innovation, developed approximately 550 years after the song rotation doctrine was first printed. The 6-year siege of Xiangyang from 1267 to 1273 is itself evidence. The Mongols, who had broken every fortification in Central Asia, were forced to import Persian siege engineers specifically because Song crossbow volley lines made their standard assault tactics impossible. They had to outsource the solution. The mainstream view credits Song technological superiority and the advantages of fixed fortification. But the Wujing Zongyao specifies this formation for open field deployment. Whatever happened to that version, we may never fully know. The spear hedge formation. The Mongols owned movement. Their entire military doctrine, ride, shoot, scatter, regroup, feign retreat, charge, was built on the assumption that movement was always available. Remove movement from the equation, and you do not have a Mongol army anymore. You have 10,000 confused, dangerous men on horses with no tactical script to follow. The spear hedge formation was engineered to remove movement. Soldiers planted rows of angled, iron-tipped stakes, the juma, in the ground ahead of their line, spaced 60 centimeters apart in 3 staggered rows, set at a 45-degree angle toward the enemy, close enough that a horse's leg could not pass between them without snapping. The Wujing Zongyao specifies the stake dimensions and the assembly protocol in enough detail that modern reconstruction is possible. Song tactical manuals document deployment time for a full anti-cavalry field at approximately 3 minutes from march column to completed barrier. Military historian David Graff, in his 2002 study of medieval Chinese warfare, traces the Juma's use against Turkic steppe cavalry back centuries before the Mongol invasions, suggesting a doctrine refined through 700 years of accumulated experience. The Songshi records Song General Du Gao deploying Juma fields at the Huai River crossing in 1232 with Mongol horses described as refusing to advance. The mainstream explanation places this alongside Roman Lilia pits and medieval European stake walls as a convergent solution to the same universal problem. That is fair. But no other tradition combined portable obstacles with crossbow rotation and spear flank coverage into a mobile, drillable system deployable on any terrain in under 3 minutes. At Xiangyang, the Mongols spent 6 years unable to solve it. The square infantry wall stand in the center of a perfect hollow square. Pikemen form the outer wall on all 4 sides. Crossbowmen stand behind them, protected. The Mongol cavalry circles the formation for 20 minutes. They fire 10,000 arrows. They ride completely around it and find identical resistance on every face. There is no flank. There is no rear, there is no way in. The hollow square, the Fengjin, is described in Sun Tzu's Art of War in the 5th century before the Common Era, elaborated in the Wei Liaozi, and deployed by Jin Dynasty commanders against Mongol cavalry as early as 1211 at the Battle of Huihe Fort, where Jin commander Wanyan Chengyu used interior crossbowmen to hold a Mongol assault temporarily. The Wujing Zongyao specifies the crossbow-to-pike ratio within the formation, a ratio that some military historians have noted bears striking resemblance to the weapon proportions documented in early modern European infantry square doctrine. Military historian John Keegan, in The Face of Battle, called the hollow infantry square the geometry that cavalry cannot solve, a formation so fundamentally optimal that any sufficiently organized army reasoning from first principles will arrive at it. The Duke of Wellington deployed it at Waterloo in 1815 against Napoleon's cuirassiers, more than 2,000 years after Sun Tzu first described the same principle. The mainstream explanation is convergent evolution. The square is the geometric solution, and any culture facing heavy cavalry will eventually build it. That explanation handles the shape. It does not explain why the interior weapon ratios match so precisely across cultures that never demonstrably communicated. Geometry explains the box. Something else may explain what goes inside it. The shield cart line. The Mongols had the best horse archers in the world, riders who could fire 6 accurate shots per minute from a galloping horse, hitting a target at 200 meters. Their armies had broken the Jin Dynasty, cracked the defenses of the Khwarezmian Empire, and would eventually swallow half the known world. Every other military doctrine that faced them tried to compete, with counter-archery, with speed, with formations designed to match their mobility. The Jin Dynasty, in the wars of the early 13th century, tried something philosophically different. They did not compete. The shield cart line placed wheeled wooden towers, 2 meters tall, 1.5 meters wide, iron-reinforced facing panels, in front of advancing infantry. Soldiers walked behind them, completely protected. Mongol arrows hit wood. Every shot was wasted. The Jin Shu records Jin commander Wanyan Heda deploying wheeled shield formations at a Yellow River crossing in 1231, with Mongol archery described as ineffective against the moving barrier. Military historian Nicola de Cosmo, in Military Culture in Imperial China, identifies the shield cart line as one of the few tactical systems that presented the Mongols with a problem they never fully solved, requiring them to either allow the formation to advance to contact or dismount and fight it directly, surrendering the mobility that made them lethal. The mainstream view calls this a natural engineering solution. But here's what complicates that. Jan Žižka's Hussite Wagenburg in Bohemia, developed around 1420, used an almost identical system. Interlocking wheeled barriers, combined arms integration, the same philosophical inversion of negating the primary weapon rather than competing with it. 2 cultures, 2 centuries apart, 8,000 kilometers from each other. The knowledge transfer pathway, some researchers suggest, may have run directly through the Mongol Empire itself. The Wagon Fort Circle. The year is 1449. The Emperor of China has just been captured by Mongol forces at the Battle of Tumu. 500,000 Ming soldiers defeated. The dynasty in shock. The greatest empire on earth humiliated on open steppe by the same cavalry doctrine that Chinese commanders had been trying to solve for 300 years. The answer that emerged over the following century was simple and staggering. Bring the city wall to the steppe and build it in under an hour. The Wagon Fort Circle, the Che Ying, chained war wagons together in a circle on open ground. Each wagon approximately 3.5 meters long, fitted with wooden shield panels, crossbow firing ports, and fire weapon launchers. 128 wagons created a circular fortress with an interior diameter of approximately 60 meters, documented in precise detail in Qi Jiguang's Lianbing Shiji of 1571. Chain connections of 1.5 meters allowed the wagons to angle into a perfect circle while maintaining a locked perimeter. Interior space held infantry, artillery, horses, and supply. The exterior presented an unbroken wall of wood, iron, and fire weapon ports to any cavalry force in the field. Historian Timothy May, in The Mongol Art of War, notes the mobile fort circle was one of the few tactical systems that consistently denied Mongol cavalry their preferred engagement terms, forcing either a siege, for which they carried no equipment, or retreat. The mainstream view explains the Hussite-Wagenburg parallel as independent development from identical tactical logic. But Mongol armies physically passed through Bohemia in 1241 and 1242, nearly 2 centuries before Žižka developed his wagon forts. The army this formation was designed to stop may have been the very carrier that spread the idea of building it. The rotating 8 gates formation. There is a formation where every entrance is a trap, and you cannot tell which until you are already inside, where the same arrangement of soldiers functions simultaneously as a labyrinth for the enemy and an escape corridor for your own men, where one gate leads to annihilation and the gate that looks like death is the only exit. The 8 gates locked formation, the Bamen Jin Suo-Zhen, arranges 8 sub-formations at cardinal and intercardinal points, each labeled by I Ching gate name: open, rest, life, injury, obstruction, death, surprise, scene. An enemy force entering the life gate faces a corridor that draws them deeper before closing. An enemy entering the death gate hits maximum concentration of force immediately. The same physical arrangement of soldiers serves both functions. There is no external visual difference between the two. The Wuhu Bingfa describes the 8 gate positions and their tactical relationships in detail. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, written in the late 14th century, preserves a battle account specific enough that military historians have analyzed it as a realistic formation blueprint rather than pure narrative. More concretely, Song's strategic planner Li Zhengbo, writing around 1257, references 8-gate perimeter principles in the design of the Diaoyu Castle fortification complex, the mountain fortress where Great Khan Mongke died in 1259 and which held out against the Mongols for a total of 36 years until the final fall of the Song Dynasty in 1279. Historians largely treat the 8 gates formation as a literary and philosophical construct rather than a literal field deployment. But the castle built on its principles killed a great Khan and outlasted the man who ordered its destruction. Perhaps it was never meant for open fields at all. Perhaps Zhuge Liang's real invention was not a formation of soldiers, but a philosophy of space. One so powerful that commanders kept rebuilding it in stone for 1,000 years after his death, and the Mongols, who broke everything else, could not find the door. 10 formations, 1 civilization, 1 impossible opponent. The Mongols conquered more territory than any empire in human history. 12 million square miles, dozens of kingdoms, armies that had never lost. They were stopped, slowed, and in critical moments broken by a tradition of military thinking that reached back 2,000 years and forward into cosmology, biology, and philosophy simultaneously. Mainstream military historians describe this as sophisticated tactical adaptation, practical solutions refined through centuries of steppe conflict. That is accurate, and it is incomplete. Because no purely practical tradition builds battle formations out of I Ching diagrams, names defensive gates after cosmic forces, or designs an anti-cavalry obstacle that functions identically in a jungle and on a frozen plain. These formations were solutions to practical problems. They were also something else, a way of understanding warfare as an expression of universal order. You watch this far because you sense that difference. Hit subscribe. Tell us in the comments which formation you think actually broke the Mongols. The Mongols changed the world. But somewhere in these formations, in the fish scale and the 8 gates and the 12 locked soldiers of the Mandarin duck, something held. The greatest war machine in history met minds that had been preparing for it for 2,000 years. Subscribe and keep asking why.